So, good morning, everyone. I think there is no first timers here, I think, or certainly no one that I've not met before. But if I'm wrong, put your hand up and you can introduce yourself. But I'm pretty certain everyone's been on these before. So, just a little bit of background. I won't go into much detail because you all know me and the background on TLH, the Transformation Leaders Hub, which was set up at the first wave of lockdown to really help those in project program change transformation get together and build out the network and create opportunities for each other and ultimately, build those relationships. And the 1% Club Roundtable is an extension of that, really, just starting to look at those marginal gains that we can all look to put into place to help us in our career and indeed in some of them in just general life. And we're doing these on a weekly basis to complement the fortnightly virtual networking sessions. And the next iteration is what we're calling the sort of 1% Club VIP program, which is aimed at those very, very small niche of people that want to move away from a sort of project to project survival and build a consulting business. It's a little bit like what I've done personally. Got sick of leaving the house at silly o'clock on Monday morning and coming back on a Thursday night or Friday, and built a consulting business. So we're getting a development program around that, which will be launched in a few weeks' time. But let's get on to what the topic of the day is. 8 habits of highly productive people. And I suppose the background to this is that if there's one asset that everybody in the world has, the same asset, it's time. We all have, irrespective of wealth, job, location, background, we all have 1,440 minutes every day and just over 500,000 minutes every year. So the key is, how do we use it? And we all know that some people are much more productive than others. So what we've done today is just started to look at the common areas, 8 common areas that have been proven that those people that are more productive than others tend to focus in on. So let me share my screen and we'll get into the detail, very quickly go through the 8. But it's like anything, we will all have examples of stuff that we've done that's worked really well. So, when we come back into the more of the discussion, it'd be great to share those because there's more than 8, obviously. There's more than 8 productivity hacks. So let's share and let's discuss them. But I'll go through my thought process around the 8 now. So just let me share my screen. So can everyone see that? Is that coming through? Last week we had some problems with the sharing, so
yeah, you see that.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Habit number 1 is all about reducing the noise, and we've probably seen this sort of simple sort of quadrant process before, looking at trying to map out your activities based upon whether they are urgent or not urgent, and whether they are important or not important. And all too often we get into having a list of things to do that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we if you're not careful, you end up doing the top one first, and it might be not important and not urgent. So this is a pretty basic one that everyone will have probably seen, but it's always useful just to refresh our minds and focus in on the primary focus should be those things that are urgent and important, and your secondary focus should be those that are important and not as urgent. And then the rest, if they're not important, question why are you doing it, and can you delegate it, can you hand it off? And the non-urgent, non-important, does it really need to be done? I know in the past I've tended to ignore that sort of bottom left quadrant personally, and then if someone chases me up because I've not done anything, then apologise and we move it up the line. But it reduces the noise. It just allows us to get on with the stuff that's really urgent and important. So the second one is about creating barriers to entry, and in today's world of instant access, telephones, laptops, iPads, social media, every time you're doing stuff, how many times do you get interrupted because you've got notifications of an email coming in, or notifications that someone sent you a WhatsApp message on your phone, or if you're in the office, people coming in and just walking past your desk or walking into your office and just talking to you. The key is to create those barriers so that those sort of interruptions don't happen. So on phones, you can switch off notifications. I'm on a MacBook, and the latest iOS came out over the weekend, and that has an ability to switch off all notifications for a period of time. So it's so, we have got capabilities now to switch these things off. We've just got to get into the routine of doing it and getting some dedicated time whilst you're doing the work, and stopping those interruptions. The third aspect sort of follows on from that, really, and it's about optimizing those time pockets. It's really understanding where you are naturally at your most productive. So personally, I'm a morning person. I tend to get up and do stuff, and then as the day goes on, I don't necessarily lose interest, but my motivation, my real energy, sort of dissipates. Other people are in the afternoon. Other people are in the evening. It's completely it's completely independent, completely personal to you. But the key is to understand when you are naturally at your most productive, and allocate time and block time out of your diary so that you can do the stuff that's important and urgent. And that's critical, because all too often your diary will get filled up with stuff that's not urgent and important. To you, might be urgent and important to other people, but not to you. So block out diary time for when you're the most productive, and do the things that are important to you. So I sort of talk about this power of power. So every morning, I know that I personally, one of the key aspects that I've got to do is marketing activities. I've got to be out there, I've got to talk to people, I've got to open up conversations, I've got to generate leads. So every hour, I've got from 8:30 to 9:30, except for the day when we're doing the virtual networking, and I've changed the timings for that one. But every day, for that 8:30 to 9:30, I'm doing marketing activity. And I know I can see very clearly when that stops. A couple of weeks later, the amount of opportunities significantly reduces. But I see marketing and sales activity being urgent and important for my business. So I allocate time specifically in the morning, because that's when I'm more energized, and I call it the hour of power. I definitely recommend that you do something similar for the stuff that's important to you. But critically, put some time blocks in your diary when you are at your most productive. The fourth aspect is strategic breaks. All too often, we'll get into stuff, and because of the interruptions, you never really get any real break. Because as soon as someone's left you, or you've picked up the last email, you get back to what you're classifying to be the activity that you're doing, and time runs away from you. It's been proven scientifically that if you take a 10-minute break every hour of the day, so effectively work 50 minutes and take 10 minutes break, majority of people are significantly more productive than they would be if they didn't take that 10-minute break. Also, take a 45-minute to an hour break at lunch. Get away from your desk, go for a walk, move around the workplace, just get some fresh air, get out into nature. It gives you that, it re-energizes you for the afternoon. And again, it's all about getting you in the best possible frame of mind so that you can be productive in the activities that you've got to do. So yeah, I tend to, and the people that have been deemed to be the most productive tend to work 50 minutes in every hour, and certainly take a minimum of an hour break for lunch. And then what do you use the breaks for? Well, it is about replenishing this inspiration and absorbing new inspiration. So go out and get some fresh air, go out and have a walk, go and do some exercise, get away from the desk, move away from the activity that you're doing, give your mind some time just to replenish. Maybe listen to a podcast. There's loads and loads of podcasts out there. Some are inspirational, some are just fun, some are just gossip. But you know, it's a great way of taking your mind away from what you've got to do and the focus. Maybe read some books or magazines or whatever. But again, it's just about taking yourself away from the activity and giving you that time to refresh your mind. Excuse me. Another key habit is to set deadlines and goals for yourself in terms of the activities. Most people have a temptation to procrastinate. We might all say that we don't, but in reality, a lot of us do. It's always easier to put things off. So how do you overcome that? Almost by creating these deadlines and these goals. And they don't need to necessarily be real ones, but set them. And if you can, what I find is that if you commit to somebody else that you're going to do it by a certain point, you're much more likely to do it than you ever were if you were only committing to yourself. That again, not everybody's like that, but a lot of people are. And the other part of it is also give yourself some reward for doing it. So you're almost sort of setting a goal, setting an objective. When you achieve it, you go reward yourself with a certain thing. So, you know, I'll make 10 calls before I reward myself with a cake, or I'll finish this report off before I go and get myself a coffee, or blah, blah, blah. But, you know, just almost set these little, small, tangible objectives that with a specific deadline. That's the key, with a specific deadline, and you'll be amazed just how much more you get done, and how you avoid procrastinating and just leaving things for later or tomorrow, or what I think the Spanish calls it mañana. Let's not get into that routine. And so looking at why we procrastinate and why we put things off, there tends to be three key elements to that. And again, if you can control those three key elements, and those people that are the most productive tend to control them, that's again a way of getting more done. So one of them is that the task just appears too big. It's going to take me weeks to do, or it's going to take me a good few hours. I haven't got those few hours in my diary at the moment. I'll just have to let it go. And the way to do that is to break it into smaller components. It's how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So let's break things down into smaller components and allocate time to do that with those deadlines, with those goals and those rewards. And again, you'll be amazed just how quickly you get things done. The second key thing is overwhelm. And this comes back right to that sort of first 4-quadrant route. If you've got a list of stuff that you've got to do, and the list just gets longer and longer and longer, then it's quite easy to become overwhelmed, because you keep looking at this list and you keep seeing that there's more stuff at the bottom of the list than you're scribing out that you've completed. So rather than having a to-do list and a traditional list, try to allocate it into those 4 quadrants. And again, you suddenly realize that the stuff that you've really got to do is a lot smaller than the total list that you've got to do. It just allows you to break that down. And then your to-do list is really just the importance and urgent and important aspects in the first instance. And then overcoming the procrastination, it's that JDFI approach. It's really about taking that first step. I don't know about you, but all too often, stuff, the complexity, the difficulty, the challenge of stuff pales into insignificance once you've started to move into it and start the process. It's almost that you are more concerned about what it's going to be like. But once you're in there and you start doing it, it becomes it becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot clearer. So just step into it and just JDFI really, and move into doing the activity. And then the final habit, which is links a lot of it together really, is where you can automate it, or outsource it, or delegate it. And in terms of the outsourcing, there are lots of smaller organisations and large organisations out there that are this sort of building up this gig economy, that all they want to do is small activities that actually other people don't want to do. So these are the people out there that you can work with on a hourly rate or an hourly basis to do stuff that is not high value stuff for you, but it needs to be done. So if you've got a team, can you delegate it to your team? Whether that's a real team or a virtual team, can you delegate stuff into that team? And equally, there's lots of tools out there to automate activities. So once you know what's got to do, there's probably some tools that you can do, that you can bring in to automate the mundane tasks that you do each and every day, which will then release time for you to do the urgent, important activities that need your real input. So those are the 8 habits for highly productive people. What's your thoughts? Let me come out of the sharing and get your thoughts and your input really. And if you've got any other hacks that you want to share, please do so.
I like the one where you say, that quadrant diagram, because I used to do something similar with a list on Excel. Yeah. And I would put a priority next to it, 1 to 4, and then reorder it every day. And I had a boss at the time who was a bit of a pain in the backside, and he would just give me things to do. And I very soon realized that you would never chase them up. So I stopped doing them, and they got a 4 and immediately went to the bottom of the list. And if you just look at the ones and you just work on those, and it's as though the list, I didn't care how long the list got, because it was irrelevant. Anything that was a 4 was irrelevant. And so you just focus on those. There's 4 or 5 at the top, and you've got to be quite brutal with it. 1 is reserved for something that you really understand is top priority. The other thing I find with that is to also get other people to do the same, because when you're working in a team, other people who've got things that just aren't top priority, but they're obsessing about it, they're taking your time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Especially when you're working in well, I was going to say especially when you're working in a team. It's probably not necessarily just when you're working in a team. It's critical that you work on the stuff that's urgent and important for you, that you think are urgent and important, because otherwise people will start to direct what's urgent and important for you. So email will come in and suddenly someone's chasing, or as you say, your boss gives you loads of stuff to do. And because it's your boss, you might think, well, it's urgent, but 9 times out of 10, no one chases the email up after 2 or 3 until 2 or 3 days. No. Right? Your boss doesn't chase things up, but you've just got to be quite rigorous, I suppose, of saying, actually, these are the things that I'm classifying as urgent and important today. And if something comes in, you make a value judgment on whether or not it should go into that quadrant. But actually, those are the things that I'm focusing in on, and going one stage further to say, I'm going to do this first, then that, and then that, because I'm prioritizing the top quadrant as well. So Andrew's put a comment on chat to say, the area I struggle with is the resilience. I agree with all of these, but you have to stick to them thick and thin. So what do you think? What's your thought there, Andrew? Do you want to just explain that a little bit further?
I suppose, Tony, I can do everything that you've talked about when everything's easy and there's no pressure and that sort of thing. I think the hardest thing is to still take your 10-minute break when you're doing long hours, to still keep your lists and not just react to whoever shouting the loudest and that sort of thing. And in some ways, it's almost as though your pie needs a middle bit saying sort of stick at it, or resilience or something like that, where, you know, I find meditation, for example, is very useful, but it's one of the first things that goes out the window as soon as I get really busy. And it's probably the last thing that should go out the window. So it's having that discipline and resilience to stick with it is something I'm still working on.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's one of the, you know, these 8 areas, and as we said at the start, there's lots more hacks out there for productivity. But the key is to apply them, because otherwise they're just words on a screen, aren't they? And being really rigorous about applying them. And I suppose ultimately coming back to you know, that if meditation is important to you because you know the benefits that brings, that should be in your top right quadrant. That's one of your urgent and important tasks. And actually you put that ahead of everything else, because you know that you are more productive after you've meditated than you ever are if you don't meditate. And it's almost getting into that routine and really having putting that control in your life.
That, Tony, though, because I used to see meditation as almost a treat and not something excuse me, that would help. It was just, I really enjoyed it, and it helped me just calm, but I didn't see it as, it was something that I enjoyed. So you don't put it in as, and when the pressure's on, you tend not to do the things that you like and enjoy. You just got to get down and do your work. So I understand what Andrew's saying about that, because it's rather than see it as necessary, you see it as a treat.
But it's interesting, isn't it? I always think about when you're on a flight and there's the safety briefing at the start, and the line in it is put your own mask on before you put any mask on anybody else, on your children, and it's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? Because you know, if you travel with children, the first thing you would do is look to put your mask on your child, but effectively it's saying look after yourself, so then you can then look after other people. And it's the same here, really. It's do the things that you need to do to get you in the best possible place to be able to become the most productive you can become. Chris, you've got your hand up.
I do. Something crossed my mind when you were talking about all of these points. And one is the balance between being very task focused and trying to finish items and being, as they call, a finisher. And balancing that with the commercial contribution of what you're trying to achieve or what you're doing. So sometimes it's kind of like the 80-20 rule. You can get lost in perfection, which is too expensive, and you have to pull yourself out and do the bird's eye view and say, what big steps do I have to do, and leave the 20 to the others. And that's something that's always in my mind now.
No, good point. Absolutely. I think that what's the saying? There's 80% of results come from 20% of activity. So just understand what the core 20% is and focus on that. And it's not too dissimilar from what we've just been talking about within those quadrants. So if the 20% is in that urgent stuff, I would suggest. Any other ideas that you want to share? Some stuff that you've tried before that's worked, or not tried before, but you sort of embedded in your life that helps you to be productive or get things done when you're under pressure.
One thing, I'm a serial procrastinator, and I joined a call at the beginning of this year by a lady by Frederick Murphy. And something that she sort of touched on, I don't know whether anybody else has heard it, action precedes motivation. So a lot of us sort of think that we need to be motivated to do something. And I think some of the stuff that you touched on was sort of JFDI and these sorts of things. We kind of sometimes feel, especially the tasks that we don't want to do, that we need to be motivated to do it, but sometimes just ticking it off the list, those sort of smaller, simple, quicker tasks, just doing them, but the idea and the belief that, or knowledge that the action will give you the motivation is quite cool. I like that.
Yeah, I think I've heard that one before. That, you know, that sort of yeah, you've got to start the action and then you become motivated. And it's I suppose the hardest thing I find, and I know lots of people find, in terms of keeping fit, is the journey to the gym. Once you get to the gym, you enjoy your activity and you enjoy that sort of sociality, that social aspect of being at the gym. But getting from home to the gym, which is really 10 minutes for me, 10 minutes, no, 5 minutes drive, 15 minutes walk, that's the hardest thing, to get out of the bed in the morning and go. And so it is that same principle, isn't it? It's just once you're there and you're getting into it, you enjoy it, but actually getting there. So it is that, yeah, what I've sort of termed JFDI.
I was going to say exactly the same about getting out cycling on my bike. It's that you look out and go, it's getting cold, and then you get your kit on. Once you're out, as soon as you're out on the road, you think, yeah, especially once you get into the countryside, you think this is lovely. Yeah. But it's that thought, I've got to get changed, get my kit on and get out, and that's what stops me. So having a bad time at the moment with it, so I need to get back out there, and it's just that first time, just stop procrastinating and tell myself every excuse that is out there I'll use, just to say, oh, it's a bit windy today, or I think it might rain later, or oh, I've got something to do later, so I won't have time. Yeah. Just get out and do it. So yeah, maybe this call will get me out later on.
And do any of you use these time pockets that we talk about, the sort of blocking out times in your diaries? Is that something that you've used and has been effective for you, or not?
No, I don't use it at all, and maybe I should, because I'm better in the morning as well. So
I often block out time when I'm super busy. I block out time and refuse meetings and ask secretaries not to book anything in there, because you need that. You need the space. You need the breathing time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is. Again, it's just having that control of your diary and control of your time, because it's the one asset that once it's gone, it's gone. You can never get it back.
I think it's been better in the pandemic, because everyone was working from home. I found it a lot easier to do that when I was working from home, because you don't have people chatting in the office and talking, and I'm the worst for being distracted. When someone says something, you think, oh yeah, I saw that program last night as well, I'll have a chat about it. And when you're working at home, you don't get that. You don't get the interruptions, and I tend not to answer bleeps on my phone anyway. So but I found it a lot easier when everyone was in lockdown.
What does everybody else think about that? Has that been your experience? No?
Brendan, you're nodding, you're wagging your head.
Yeah, sorry. I think it depends on which stage of life you're at. I have children, and childcare is an issue. And the tyranny of the urgent, working from home, I dread things like half term. Yeah, because it's just a nightmare. But I take your point. If you don't have those sorts of distractions and you can say no to small people, then that would probably work.
Mine are 18 and 20, and I hardly ever see them now. So I didn't have that distraction. But going back a few years, I would have probably had the same.
But it's interesting though, Brendan, what you were saying there. It's like if you think about children, everything that they want is urgent and important, isn't it? There's no other element to it. It's like, I want that sweet and I want it now. I want to go out and play now. and yeah, you know, I think that has been one of the major challenges in for lots of people that are trying to juggle school life, work life, when we've been in lockdown. So yeah, people like Neil and myself who's got older children, great. You know, we've almost had a lot more freedom than we've ever had before. But yeah, I can't imagine what it was like when you're trying to homeschool and run a business and manage clients and blah blah blah. So
the program director at HSBC she's a friend of mine, but she was very open with her Zoom calls. She's got 4 kids, and there were still 2 at home. And in a meeting with very senior people, one of her children just came in and put a blue lizard on top of her head, a toy, obviously, but this blue lizard, and she just left it there. And I thought, that's just genius. So.
Yeah, I think it did break down a lot of barriers, actually, that sort of stuff. But it was, I'm sure it was a lot really, really challenging for lots of people. Chris, is that a hand up again, or is it the same one?
That's my hand up again. Is a new one. Well, I'm a single dad with full custody, so I understand Brenda's point of view. It's hard, and you feel guilty in all of these when you're juggling between. But I wanted to ask you, Tony, I haven't read the book yet on the 7. Sorry, I've lost the idea of it now, but you'll come up with 8 habits, and it's the 7 habits of highly effective people, isn't it? The book, the Covey one. Yeah.
Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly effective.
Are they the same?
There's some overlap. So I focused upon productivity. He's right. Focused more on sort of effectiveness. So if I'm just trying to think all of them, the ones that are perhaps not in these 8 habits, he talks about start with the end in mind. So he talks about, you know, don't go into anything unless you really understand what you're trying to get from it, and be clear about what the outcomes should be. He talks about sharpen the sword. So really look at what skills, experience that you need to have and build up those, and invest time in becoming the best you that you can become. I'm just trying to think some of the other things. My mind's gone blank now.
Don't worry, I'll put you under pressure.
What else are there? So yeah, is this more about effectiveness rather than productivity? And there's
That's a good answer,
overlap, yeah. But is this probably a broader list of habits? But it's like anything; these things work in tandem, don't they? But certainly the one that I've sort of really sort of embedded into my way of thinking is that sort of start with the end in mind. And it's some stuff that I've done a lot with when I've been working with clients, when we get into a lot of issues.
I have a comment. It's a bit of a sideball, but there are new management books all the time, and there are new theories and new practices, and the older you get, the more you kind of look at them, you think these aren't that new.
No.
And I knew these a long time ago, and just they have a different label, and now there are certificates I have to get, and if I don't have the certificate, then I don't have the skill, but I have the skill from 20 years ago. It's kind of, so there's a continual kind of pressure to upgrade skills.
Yeah, I think my take on it is you're absolutely right. I think the advent of technology and stuff has introduced new things or new ways of doing stuff, but fundamentally, the core aspects that we've been talking about have been around for years and years and years, and they've been written in many hundreds of books. But the challenge back to all of us, I think, is, yeah, we might have read it 20, 30 years ago, but do we do it day in, day out? So just having someone tapping on the shoulder and reminding you every now and again, whether that's in the form of this type of activity, whether it's in the form of a new book coming onto the bookshelves and you get time to read it, and it's just refreshing your sort of thoughts, or maybe giving a slightly different perspective that opens up a new aspect for you. That's that personal development, that continual sort of cycle, I suppose, of because we all tend to. I remember I can't remember who was saying it. It was a book that I read 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. And they talk about comfort zones, and talking about the need to stretch and always push yourself to expand the horizon. And the analogy that the guy was using was, he's saying it's like a radiator and a valve on a radiator. That if you set the your controls on your central heating to 23 degrees, your heating will come on. It will fire up. It will heat the room up to above 23 degrees, but then it may go to 24 degrees, and it realizes I've hit where I need to do now. I'm going to switch off, and it starts to come down, and then it goes to 21 degrees and fires up again, and it gets, so it's always in that really small comfort zone. And it is about that, isn't it? It's starting with the end in mind. Well, actually, I don't want to get to 23 because that's my comfort zone. I want to get to 26. I want to get to 27, and reprogram yourself, and like the central heating system do, to say, actually, 27 is where I want to be. So don't switch off until I get to 27. And it's just getting it's using these sort of tools and these approaches in the best possible way to make it work for you. Because those 8 habits that we talked about, the 7 habits that Stephen Covey talks about, a lot of people won't be able to apply all 8 or 7 or all the other stuff that's in these books or on these audio tapes and podcasts, etc., etc. But if you pick 1 or 2 things and make those, what we part of the 1% club, those marginal gains, and if all you do today, after today, is just pick 2 or 3 of these things up and apply them, you'll become slightly more productive next week and the week after and the week after. And that's the whole purpose, isn't it? It's about that pushing yourself to continually be the best that you can be, whatever that is. And don't necessarily compare yourself with anybody else, because it's just becoming the best that you can be.
I think you've also got to temper them to the way you work, because that start with the end in mind. When I was at KPMG working for a partner there, she was massively busy, massively, and never had, but she put in 3 half-hour slots a week. And in that half hour, I might get 2 pages of notes of stuff to do. And she was never that clear. But I loved it, absolutely loved it, because it made me think, well, right, how am I even going to start this? No idea what she's talking about. And I didn't want to wait for the next session because she was either out of the country or at clients or wherever. And I loved it. So that, starting with the end in mind, was, I wouldn't want to do that. But so you've got to, but it made me think about, right, I've got to now think, how do I do this? What do I think she wants? And sometimes it didn't come off, but she was brilliant, because she said, oh, obviously didn't explain that well enough. Never pointed the finger at me, so I was very lucky in that respect. But I think that
in that case, Neil, you were starting with the end in mind. You were trying to put together a picture of what she was looking for you to do.
Well, often not. I would just make a start, and then that was rubbish, so I'd start again. And it was trial and error. Yeah. And sometimes it was fairly obvious, but sometimes it wasn't. But it gave me a real sense of achievement when I got to where I was going. But I didn't start saying knowing. I hardly ever knew where I was starting, what I was trying to get to. It was, and I like that, really nebulous, and I had to form that into something. And I really enjoyed that way of working. So some of them, you've got to change them to the way you want to work. Be cognizant of, well, how do I like working? Because some of them, they're not suitable for everyone. I mean, one guy says there are 7, someone else says 8. Some of them might be rubbish for you.
Yeah, and that's the key. It's just implementing the things that feel right for you.
Yeah.
And you know, I would anybody on this call have utilize all 8? Probably not. You know, but you know, some people will have 5 or 6 of them that we've covered off today. Some people will have 2 or 3 of them that they might only use sparingly. But the point is, let's be cognizant. Let's understand whether they are. Let's go through the process of saying, could that help me to move to closer to where I want to get to?
Oh, I'd definitely look at all 8 or the 7 and say, well, can that help me? And see if there's a way I can make that help me.
Okay, well,
Because there
thank
might
you
be
very much. We are coming to the end of the 45 minutes.
Wow.
Certainly
That's cool.
happy to stay on and answer any more questions or continue the discussion. But we did make a commitment that we'd only have 45 minutes. So I don't want to take any of your time when it's not deemed to be urgent and important.